After the ceremony, Jimin cut the ribbon to officially open the center. Local families streamed inside to explore, to sign up for classes, to open accounts. Children ran through the space excitedly. Parents asked questions about services. Elderly residents settled into comfortable chairs to read informational materials in their own languages. A young girl approached Jimin shyly. She was maybe 10 years old, wearing a simple dress that looked a lot like the one Jimin had worn to that bank 15 years ago. She held out a piece of paper. "Can you sign this?" The girl asked quietly. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Jimin knelt down to the girl's level. "What's your name?" "Destiny," the girl said. "That's a beautiful name," Jimin replied. She signed the paper, then looked at Destiny seriously. "Can I tell you something important?" Destiny nodded. "Don't let anyone make you feel small," Jimin said. "Not because of how you dress or where you live or how much money you have. You're valuable just as you are. And if someone treats you badly, don't let it break you. Let it make you stronger. Use it to fuel your dreams." "Is that what you did?" Destiny asked. "Yes," Jimin said. "Someone treated me badly when I was about your age. And I used that pain to build something good. You can too." Destiny smiled and ran off to show her signed paper to her mother. Jimin stood up, watching the girl go. She felt her grandmother's presence in that moment. Though she'd been gone for 3 years, the lessons remained. The values endured. The choice to be better echoed through generations. Michael approached as the crowd began to thin. "Thank you for what you said up there. For giving me credit I don't deserve." "You're earning it," Jimin said. "Every day you're earning it." "I want you to know," Michael said carefully, "I think about that day constantly. About how I treated you. If I could go back and change it, I would in a heartbeat." "I know," Jimin replied, "but we can't change the past. We can only shape the future. You're doing that now. Keep doing it." They stood together in companionable silence, watching families explore the new center. Staff members helped customers with genuine warmth. No one was being judged. No one was being made to feel less than. This was how banking should always have been. David joined them, holding a tablet. The numbers from today's account openings are impressive. Over 300 new accounts so far, and the center's only been open 4 hours. "It's not about the numbers," Jimin said gently. David smiled. "I know, but the numbers prove it's working. That doing the right thing can also be good business." Over the following months, Access Trust Bank continued to thrive. More centers opened. More customers joined. More communities that had been underserved found an institution that actually served them. The transformation wasn't complete, probably never would be fully complete, but it was real and ongoing. Jimin kept working, kept pushing for better, kept refusing to let the company settle into comfortable complacency. She promoted people based on merit and values, not background or connections. She insisted on continuing education for all employees about serving diverse communities. She measured success not just in profits but in impact. 5 years after that day in the Premium Trust Bank lobby, Jimin received an award from the National Financial Inclusion Initiative. The ceremony was at a fancy hotel, attended by banking executives, politicians, and community leaders. She wore a simple navy dress deliberately chosen to echo that first dress from so long ago. In her acceptance speech, she told her story one more time. Not because people didn't know it by now, but because the story mattered. It showed that pain could become purpose, that being underestimated could fuel determination, that systems could change if someone had the courage to challenge them. "I'm often asked what drives me," Jimin said from the podium. "People assume it's ambition or wanting to be wealthy or proving something to people who doubted me. And maybe those things are part of it, but mostly it's simpler than that." She paused, looking out at the audience. "I remember what it felt like to be judged unfairly, to be made to feel small when I should have been welcomed. And I never want anyone else to feel that way. Every customer we serve with dignity, every person we help build financial security, every young person we teach about money, they're all victories against the kind of casual cruelty I experienced. That's what drives me, making sure the next generation has it better." The audience stood and applauded. Jimin saw her team scattered throughout the crowd. David, Rachel, Sarah, Marcus, Lisa, all the people who'd believed in the vision and worked to make it real. And there in the back she saw Michael Chen standing and clapping with genuine pride on his face. Later at the reception, an elderly woman approached Jimin. She had kind eyes and a warm smile that reminded Jimin achingly of her grandmother. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you," the woman said. It was like she'd read Jimin's mind. "Did you know her?" Jimin asked, surprised. "No," the woman said. "But I know women like her. Women who teach their granddaughters to turn pain into purpose, to be better than the people who hurt them, to break cycles instead of continuing them. That's what you've done. That's her legacy living through you." Jimin felt tears prick her eyes. She'd cried more in the past 5 years than in all the years before. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming emotion of seeing dreams become reality, of proving that change was possible, of knowing that her grandmother's teachings had borne fruit. That night, Jimin returned to the very first Premium Trust Bank branch where her journey had begun. It was late, the branch was closed, but she had keys now. She was the CEO. She could go anywhere. She stood in that marble lobby, remembering how small she'd felt at 12 years old, how the beautiful space had intimidated her, how Michael Chen's judgment had cut through her pride and excitement. She remembered her grandmother's hand in hers, her grandmother's words about choosing to be better. Now the space felt different, still beautiful but warmer, more welcoming. The changes were subtle but meaningful. Softer lighting, comfortable seating, informational materials in multiple languages, staff training that emphasized service over sales, a culture that valued every customer equally. This was what success looked like. Not destroying what had hurt her, but transforming it into something better. Not revenge, but redemption. Not getting even, but getting ahead while pulling others up with her. Jimin walked to the customer service desk where Michael Chen had once sat. She placed her hand on the counter, feeling the cool surface beneath her palm. 15 years ago, she'd stood on the other side of this counter, a child with dreams and $247. Now she owned the bank. She'd done exactly what she'd promised herself she would do. But more than that, she'd changed banking for millions of people. She'd proven that business could be profitable and ethical, that success could be measured in both dollars and dignity. That one person, given enough determination and support, could shift entire systems toward justice. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. "Tomorrow's board meeting agenda is set. We're proposing expansion to 50 more underserved communities. Think they'll approve?" Jimin smiled and typed back, "They'll approve. We have the numbers and the mission. How can they say no?" She took one last look around the lobby. A 12-year-old girl in a worn dress had walked through these doors once, scared and hopeful and determined. She'd been judged and dismissed. She'd been made to feel small, but she hadn't stayed small. She'd grown. She'd built. She'd transformed not just herself, but the very institution that had rejected her. That was the real story. Not that she'd become CEO, though that mattered. Not that she'd become wealthy, though that provided security she'd never had as a child. The real story was that she'd taken her pain and turned it into purpose. She'd taken a system designed to keep people out and redesigned it to welcome everyone in. She'd taken her grandmother's lessons about grace and dignity and built them into a company serving millions. As Jimin left the building and walked into the cool night air, she felt at peace. The journey wasn't over. There was still work to do, still communities to serve, still systems to change. But she'd proven it was possible. She'd shown that banking could be different, that people could change, that grace could be more powerful than revenge. Tomorrow she'd wake up early like always and keep building, keep pushing, keep working toward a world where no 12-year-old ever felt the way she'd felt in that lobby. Where everyone, regardless of what they wore or how much money they had, was treated with the dignity they deserved. That was the real victory. And it was worth every difficult moment of the journey. The glass doors of Premium Trust Bank gleamed in the afternoon sun. Jimin Park stood outside with her grandmother, staring at her reflection in the polished surface. Her dress was clean but old, passed down from a cousin 3 years ago. The hem had been let out twice, and the fabric had faded from navy blue to a softer shade that almost looked gray in certain light. Her shoes, once black and shiny, now showed scuff marks that no amount of polish could hide. "Ready?" her grandmother asked, squeezing her hand gently. Jimin nodded. She was 12 years old, and today was important. In her other hand, she clutched a small envelope containing $247. Every single bill represented early mornings delivering newspapers, weekends helping neighbors with yard work, and careful saving over 8 months. This was her money, earned through her own hard work, and she was proud of it. They walked through the doors together. The bank was nothing like Jimin had imagined. The floor was made of marble that reflected the bright lights above. Leather chairs sat in neat rows. Everything looked expensive and perfect. Jimin suddenly felt very small and very aware of her worn dress. A security guard glanced at them but said nothing. Jimin's grandmother walked with her head high, leading them toward the customer service desk. Behind the desk sat a young man in a crisp suit. His name tag read, Michael Chen, Customer Service Associate. Michael looked up from his computer screen. His eyes moved from Jimin's grandmother to Jimin, then down to their clothes. Something changed in his expression. It was subtle, but Jimin saw it. A small tightening around his mouth. A quick judgment made in seconds. Can I help you? He asked. His tone was polite enough, but something felt cold about it. Yes, Jimin's grandmother said warmly. My granddaughter would like to open a savings account. Michael's eyebrows rose slightly. A savings account? He looked at Jimin again, taking in her simple dress and old shoes. How much are we talking about? Jimin stepped forward, her voice clear despite her nervousness. $247. I earned it myself. I see, Michael said. He didn't smile. Instead, he pulled out some papers with the slow, reluctant movement of someone doing a task they considered beneath them. Well, we do have accounts for smaller amounts, though I should mention our minimum balance requirement is $100, and there are monthly fees unless you maintain at least $500 in the account. We understand, Jimin's grandmother said patiently. Michael began typing on his computer, his fingers moving slowly across the keys. So what brings you to Premium Trust Bank specifically? We usually serve a different type of clientele. He said the last word in a way that made it sound like Jimin and her grandmother didn't belong. A woman in an expensive suit sitting nearby looked over, then quickly looked away. A businessman waiting in line shifted uncomfortably. We chose this bank because it's close to our home, Jimin's grandmother explained, her voice still kind, and because everyone deserves access to good banking services. Michael made a small sound that might have been a laugh. Of course, everyone deserves access. He said it like he was repeating words he had to say but didn't believe. I'll just need to see 2 forms of identification and proof of address. As Jimin's grandmother pulled out the documents, Michael continued filling out the forms. You know, he said, not looking up. A lot of people think banks like this are for everyone, but the truth is, maintaining an account here requires a certain level of financial commitment. The fees can add up quickly for someone with limited funds. My granddaughter is very responsible with money, her grandmother said firmly. I'm sure, Michael replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. He glanced at Jimin again, and this time his disdain was clearer. That's a nice dress, very practical. Jimin felt her cheeks burn. She knew what he meant. He thought her dress was poor. He thought she was poor. He thought she didn't belong in his bank with its marble floors and leather chairs. Thank you, she said quietly, refusing to look away from his face. Michael processed the paperwork with an air of someone doing a favor they would rather not do. When Jimin handed over her envelope of cash, he counted it with exaggerated care, as if expecting the amount to be wrong. Each bill was examined, held up to the light, counted twice. $247, he confirmed, sounding almost disappointed that it was all there. Congratulations. You're now a Premium Trust Bank customer. The way he said it made it sound like an insult rather than a welcome. He handed Jimin a temporary debit card and a folder of information. Your permanent card will arrive in 7 to 10 business days. Try not to lose this one. He said it like he expected she would. An older customer who had been watching the entire exchange shook his head slightly and looked away. A teller at the next window frowned but continued with her own customer. Everyone saw what was happening, but no one said anything. As they turned to leave, Michael called out, "Oh, and I'd recommend reviewing those fees carefully. Wouldn't want any surprises when your account balance gets too low." There was a mean satisfaction in his voice. Jimin and her grandmother walked out of the bank in silence. The glass doors closed behind them with a soft whoosh. Once they were on the sidewalk, Jimin felt tears starting to form. She blinked them back, angry at herself for wanting to cry. He was mean, she said quietly. Her grandmother stopped walking and knelt down so they were eye to eye. Yes, he was. And I'm sorry you had to experience that, sweetheart. But let me tell you something important. She took both of Jimin's hands in hers. People like him judge others by their clothes, their money, what they can see on the outside. But he doesn't know you. He doesn't know how hard you worked for that money. He doesn't know how smart you are, how determined, how kind. He saw what he wanted to see because it made him feel better about himself. It's not fair, Jimin said. No, it's not fair, and you have two choices now. You can let his words make you feel small, or you can use them to make yourself stronger. You can prove that people like him are wrong about people like us. Jimin wiped her eyes. How? Her grandmother smiled. By becoming so successful that one day people like him will have to respect you. Not because of what you wear or where you come from, but because of what you've accomplished. And when that day comes, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember how he made you feel. And you'll choose to treat others better than he treated you. They started walking again, hand in hand. Jimin looked back at the bank one more time. The glass doors still gleamed. Inside, Michael Chen was helping another customer, someone in expensive clothes who he greeted with a genuine smile. Grandmother? Jimin said, Yes, dear. One day I'm going to own a bank. A bank where everyone is treated the same, where it doesn't matter what you wear or how much money you have, where people like Mr. Chen learn that they were wrong. Her grandmother squeezed her hand. I believe you will, Jimin. I believe you will. That night, Jimin lay in bed staring at her temporary debit card. It was just a piece of plastic, but it represented something bigger now. It wasn't just her savings anymore. It was a promise she had made to herself. She would work harder than anyone. She would be smarter, more determined. She would prove that Michael Chen's judgment of her was the biggest mistake he ever made. She placed the card on her nightstand and closed her eyes. The memory of his condescending voice, his dismissive looks, his mean comments about her dress played in her mind. But instead of making her feel small, they made something inside her grow stronger. Anger could be destructive, but it could also be fuel. And Jimin Park was going to use every drop of it to power her way to the top. Tomorrow she would wake up early and deliver newspapers like always. But now she had a bigger goal than just saving money. She had a destination in mind, and nothing would stop her from reaching it. 8 years later, Jimin Park sat in a lecture hall at Riverside Business School, her laptop open and her focus absolute. At 20 years old, she had changed in many ways. She was taller now, confident in how she carried herself, but some things remained the same. Her clothes were still simple and practical. Her backpack was 3 years old, carefully repaired whenever a strap threatened to tear. Every dollar still mattered. The professor, Dr. Richard Sterling, was discussing traditional banking models. The current system works, he said, pacing across the front of the room. Banks have operated this way for decades. Change for the sake of change is rarely wise in finance. Jimin raised her hand. But what about the millions of people who can't access traditional banking? The fees, the minimum balances, the credit requirements, they keep poor people poor. Dr. Sterling smiled in that patient way teachers use when they think a student is being naive. Banks are businesses, Miss Park. They have costs to cover, shareholders to satisfy. Perhaps those people aren't ready for banking services. Several students nodded in agreement. Jimin noticed how most of them wore expensive clothes and carried the latest technology. They had probably never been turned away from anything in their lives. Or perhaps banks aren't ready to serve them properly. Jimin replied, keeping her voice steady. After class, she gathered her things quickly. She had 30 minutes to get to her first job of the day. She worked at a coffee shop near campus from 2 to 6, then cleaned offices from 7 to 11 at night. On weekends, she did freelance web design. Sleep was something she fit in when she could. Her roommate, Minseo, didn't understand. You have a full scholarship, Minseo said one evening watching Jimin pack her work uniform. Why do you work so much? You should be enjoying college. Jimin didn't know how to explain it. The scholarship covered tuition and books, but not life. Not food, not rent, not the constant fear that one unexpected expense would destroy everything she'd built. And beyond that, she was saving for something bigger. She had an idea growing in her mind, taking shape slowly over years, an idea that needed money to become real. Late one night after her cleaning shift, Jimin sat in the empty office building and opened her laptop. She had been researching mobile banking apps, financial technology, ways to make banking accessible to everyone. The technology existed, the need existed. What was missing was someone willing to challenge the old way of doing things. She started writing. Not an essay for class, but a business plan. She called it FinAccess, a mobile banking platform designed for people traditional banks ignored. No minimum balances. No hidden fees. Simple, clear, accessible. Banking for people who worked 3 jobs. For immigrants sending money home. For young people trying to build their first savings account without being judged for their clothes. As she wrote, she remembered that day 8 years ago. The marble floors. Michael Chen's dismissive voice. The way he had looked at her dress like it told him everything he needed to know about her worth. She had thought about that day so many times. Sometimes the memory still hurt. But mostly it pushed her forward. Weeks turned into months. Jimin refined her business plan during every spare moment. She calculated costs, researched regulations, designed user interfaces on paper napkins during her coffee shop breaks. Her grades remained perfect because failure wasn't an option, but her true education was happening outside the classroom. One professor, Dr. Angela Martinez, noticed her passion. After a presentation on financial inclusion, Dr. Martinez pulled Jimin aside. That was excellent work. Have you thought about the business competition next semester? The winner gets seed funding and mentorship. Jimin had thought about it. She'd thought about little else. I'm working on something, she admitted. Show me, Dr. Martinez said, so Jimin did. In Dr. Martinez's small office, she presented FinAccess. She explained the problem, the solution, the market potential. She showed her research, her financial projections, her vision for how banking could be different. Dr. Martinez listened without interrupting. When Jimin finished, the professor was quiet for a long moment. This is ambitious, she finally said. Some would say impossible. Traditional banks have huge advantages. Resources, infrastructure, trust. Jimin's heart sank. But, Dr. Martinez continued, they're also slow, stuck in old ways, and they've ignored a huge portion of the population. You're right that there's an opportunity here. The question is whether you're ready for how hard this will be. I've been ready my whole life, Jimin said. Over the next months, Dr. Martinez became an unofficial mentor. She introduced Jimin to people in the tech industry, in finance, in venture capital. Many of them were polite but dismissive. A few were openly skeptical. One investor, a man named Charles Bradford, barely looked at Jimin's presentation before interrupting. Banking is complicated. It's regulated. It requires massive capital. What makes you think a college student can disrupt an industry that's been around for centuries? Because that industry forgets that banking should serve people, not the other way around, Jimin replied. Charles laughed. Idealism is cute, but this is business. Come back when you understand how the real world works. Jimin gathered her materials and left. In the elevator down, she felt the familiar burn of being underestimated. But this time it didn't just hurt. It clarified her purpose. People like Charles Bradford needed someone to prove them wrong. The business competition came. Jimin stood on stage in a simple black dress she'd bought from a thrift store and made her pitch. She spoke about financial inclusion, about technology serving humanity, about changing systems that kept people out instead of welcoming them in. The judges asked hard questions. How would she make money? How would she compete with established banks? What made her qualified? She answered each one with data, with research, with the confidence of someone who had lived the problem she was solving. She didn't win first place. She came in third. The prize was $5,000 in mentorship from a local venture capital firm. It wasn't everything she needed, but it was a start. That night, Jimin called her grandmother. I'm going to do it, she said. I'm going to start the company. Her grandmother's voice was warm with pride. I never doubted you would. But remember what I told you years ago. When you succeed, and you will succeed, remember how people made you feel, and choose to be different. I will, Jimin promised. Using the competition winnings and her own savings, Jimin hired a developer from her computer science class. His name was David Lee, and he was brilliant but struggling to pay for school. She couldn't pay him much, but she offered him equity in the company and a vision he believed in. They worked in Jimin's tiny apartment, coding late into the night. She dropped down to part-time at the coffee shop but kept the cleaning job. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford. Her social life disappeared completely. Min-seo moved out, unable to handle the constant work and stress. 6 months later, they had a working prototype. It wasn't perfect, but it functioned. Users could open accounts in minutes using just their phone. No credit check, no minimum balance, no fees for basic services. Everything was clear and simple, designed for people who had been shut out of traditional banking. Jimin's next challenge was finding real users. She went to immigrant community centers, to churches in low-income neighborhoods, to small businesses struggling with banking fees. She listened to people's stories. An older woman who had been denied a bank account because of poor credit. A young man working 2 jobs who couldn't afford the minimum balance requirements. A small restaurant owner paying hundreds in fees every month. Each story reminded her why this mattered. Each person became a user and then an advocate. FinAccess grew slowly but steadily. 20 users became 50, then 100, then 1,000. Banks started noticing. Not because they saw FinAccess as a threat, but because they saw it as proof of a market they had been ignoring. Some tried to copy the model but couldn't let go of their fee structures. Others dismissed it as a fad that would fade. One bank employee reached out anonymously through the app's feedback system. "I work at a major bank," the message read. "We laugh at FinAccess in meetings, but I use it personally because my own employer's fees are too high. You're on to something. Don't stop." Jimin pinned that message above her desk. On hard days when the code broke or money ran low or investors rejected her, she read it again. 2 years after starting FinAccess, Jimin graduated from business school. She walked across the stage to receive her diploma, but her mind was elsewhere. The company needed more funding to scale. They needed licenses, infrastructure, partnerships. She was still working cleaning jobs to keep things running. Dr. Martinez hugged her after the ceremony. "Proud of you. What's next?" "Bigger investors," Jimin said. "Real funding. We're ready to scale. They'll test you," Dr. Martinez warned. "They'll try to change your vision, to make you compromise. Don't lose sight of why you started." Jimin thought about a 12-year-old girl in a worn dress, clutching an envelope of hard-earned money, being made to feel small by someone who judged her worth by her appearance. That girl was still inside her, still angry, still determined. "I won't," she said. "I promise." The road ahead was uncertain, but Jimin had never been more sure of her path. FinAccess was more than a business. It was proof that being underestimated could become strength, that having something to prove could drive you further than privilege ever could. And somewhere out there, Michael Chen was still working at Premium Trust Bank, completely unaware that the girl he had dismissed was building something that would one day change everything. The office was barely an office at all. Jimin Park stood in the middle of a converted warehouse space, looking at the 5 desks they'd managed to afford. The chairs didn't match. The walls needed paint. The coffee maker was older than most of the employees, but it was theirs, and it was real. FinAccess had been officially operating for 6 months. The app now had 15,000 users and was growing by hundreds every week. But growth meant problems. Server costs were rising. Customer service requests flooded in. Every day brought new technical challenges and financial pressures that kept Jimin awake at night. She was 23 now, and people said she looked older. The stress showed in ways she tried to hide. Dark circles under her eyes, a tension in her shoulders that never quite left. But her determination had only grown stronger. David Lee, her first developer and now chief technology officer, walked over with his laptop. "We've got another server issue. We need to upgrade our infrastructure, but that means money we don't have." "How much time do we have?" Jimin asked. "Maybe 2 weeks before the system can't handle the load." Jimin nodded, her mind already calculating options. They had 3 potential investors meeting with them this week. One of them had to say yes. They had to. The first investor meeting was the next morning. Thomas Wu ran a small venture capital firm focused on financial technology. He'd made millions betting on early-stage companies. Jimin prepared for hours, reviewing every slide, anticipating every question. Thomas arrived in an expensive suit, his assistant trailing behind him with a tablet. He sat down across from Jimin in their small conference room, which was really just a corner of the office with a slightly nicer table. "Tell me why I should invest in FinAccess," he said, not bothering with small talk. Jimin launched into her pitch. She showed user growth charts, retention rates, customer testimonials. She explained the market opportunity, the millions of underserved people traditional banks ignored. Her passion was evident in every word. Thomas listened without expression. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Your numbers are interesting, but your margins are too thin. You're not charging enough fees. Banking is about profitability. Banking should be about service, Jimin countered. Our users stay because we don't nickel and dime them. That loyalty is worth more than short-term fees. Maybe, Thomas said, standing up. But I invest in profits, not philosophies. Good luck, Miss Park. He left without shaking her hand. His assistant offered an apologetic smile before following him out. David found Jimin sitting alone in the conference room an hour later. That bad? He didn't get it, she said quietly. He just saw another banking app, not what we're really trying to do. The other meetings will go better, David said, though he didn't sound convinced. They didn't. The second investor wanted to change everything. Higher fees, credit checks, target wealthier customers. Pivot toward profit, she said. This charity model won't scale. The third investor was more polite but equally unconvinced. Come back when you have 100,000 users. Then we can talk. Jimin went home that night to her studio apartment, the same one she'd lived in through college. She still couldn't afford anything better. She heated up instant noodles and sat on her mattress on the floor, her laptop balanced on her knees. The rejection stung, but she'd felt worse. She'd felt Michael Chen's contempt 8 years ago. These investors were just obstacles, not endpoints. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Jimin Park? A woman's voice said when she picked up. Yes? My name is Susan Rodriguez. I'm a community organizer in Los Angeles. I heard about FinAccess from one of my clients. I have 300 people in my community who need banking services. Your app is exactly what they need. But I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to come speak to them, help them understand how to use it. Jimin felt something shift inside her chest. You have 300 people? More, actually. These are housekeepers, gardeners, construction workers. Good people who can't get traditional bank accounts. Your app is changing their lives. After they hung up, Jimin sat in silence for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop and booked a flight to Los Angeles. She couldn't really afford it, but she had to see this for herself. The community center was in a neighborhood that reminded Jimin of where she grew up. Small houses, chain-link fences, kids playing in the street. Inside, rows of chairs were filled with people waiting to hear about FinAccess. They were mostly immigrants, people who worked with their hands, people wearing the kind of simple clothes Jimin once wore to a bank and was judged for. Susan introduced her. This is Jimin Park. She created FinAccess because she believes everyone deserves access to banking. Not just rich people. The room erupted in applause. Jimin felt tears threaten but blinked them back. She stood at the front and told her story. Not the sanitized version she gave investors, but the real one. The worn dress. Michael Chen's dismissive voice. Being made to feel small. Using that pain to create something better. People nodded. They understood. Many of them had similar stories. A man named Carlos had been denied an account because he didn't have enough documentation. A woman named Maria had lost hundreds of dollars to check cashing fees. A young man named Tommy had been laughed at by a bank teller who didn't think he belonged there. Jimin helped them download the app, walked them through setting up accounts, answered every question with patience she didn't know she had left after the exhausting week. These were her users. These were the people she was fighting for. On the flight back, she felt renewed. Investors might not understand, but the users did. And as long as people needed FinAccess, she would find a way to keep it running. The next months were a blur of 18-hour days and constant problem-solving. The team grew to 12 people, all working for equity and hope more than actual salary. They were a diverse group, each with their own story of being underestimated. Sarah, a single mother who couldn't get hired by traditional tech companies because of her resume gaps. Marcus, a brilliant coder who'd been incarcerated and couldn't pass corporate background checks. Lisa, a transgender woman who'd faced discrimination at every major bank she'd interviewed with. They worked harder than any team Jimin had ever seen. They believed in the mission because it was personal for all of them. One evening, Jimin was reviewing financial statements when she noticed something interesting. Premium Trust Bank, the bank from her childhood, was in the news. Their stock had dropped 15%. Customer satisfaction scores were down. A scandal about discriminatory lending practices had damaged their reputation. She pulled up their financial reports. They were struggling with outdated technology, losing younger customers to newer, more accessible platforms. They'd announced plans to modernize but had no clear strategy. David noticed her staring at the screen. Something wrong? No, Jimin said slowly. Something interesting. Premium Trust Bank is vulnerable. She filed the information away. It wasn't relevant yet, but someday it might be. FinAccess hit 50,000 users 6 months later, then 100,000. The growth was exponential now, fueled by word of mouth in communities that traditional banks had ignored. Every user brought friends, family members, co-workers. The media started paying attention. A local news station did a story on FinAccess. Then a national business magazine featured Jimin on their 30 under 30 list. The article called her a disruptor, a visionary, someone who was changing banking from the ground up. With the publicity came new investors, serious ones with serious money. A venture capital firm called Summit Partners reached out. They specialized in companies disrupting traditional industries. Their senior partner, James Morrison, flew in to meet Jimin personally. This time the meeting was different. James understood what FinAccess was trying to do. He didn't ask her to change the model or add fees. Instead, he asked how much money she needed to scale properly. $3 million, Jimin said, her heart pounding. It was the number they'd calculated as necessary to upgrade infrastructure, expand the team, and push into new markets. James nodded. I think we can do $5 million. You're going to need more than you think. Jimin felt dizzy. $5 million. It was more money than she'd ever imagined having access to. What's the catch? No catch, James said. We want equity, obviously, and a board seat. But we're not going to tell you how to run your company. We believe in your vision. Banking has needed disruption for decades. You're the one to do it. The deal took weeks to finalize. Lawyers, contracts, due diligence. Jimin barely slept, terrified something would fall through. But it didn't. The money came through. FinAccess was valued at $50 million, making Jimin a paper millionaire, though she didn't change anything about how she lived. With real funding, everything accelerated. They hired more developers, customer service representatives, compliance experts. They upgraded to a real office with actual furniture. They expanded to more states, navigating the complex web of banking regulations. 2 years later, FinAccess had 2 million users and was processing billions in transactions. They'd become profitable, proving that banking could serve people and make money. Other fintech companies tried to copy them, but they lacked the authentic connection to the communities they served. Traditional banks started feeling the pressure. They were losing customers, especially younger ones and underserved populations. Some tried to adapt. Others doubled down on their old ways. Premium Trust Bank fell into the latter category. Their leadership dismissed fintech as a fad. They believed their size and history would protect them. They were wrong. Their customer base continued shrinking. Their stock kept falling. Internal problems mounted as outdated systems failed to keep up with modern expectations. Jimin watched from a distance, FinAccess growing stronger while Premium Trust Bank grew weaker. She thought about that 12-year-old girl sometimes, standing in that marble lobby, being judged by a man who saw only her worn dress. She wondered if Michael Chen still worked there. She wondered if he ever thought about that day. One morning, Jimin's assistant told her someone from Premium Trust Bank had requested a meeting. Not Michael Chen, but someone from their executive team. They wanted to discuss a potential partnership. Jimin stared at the meeting request for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not a kind smile. A smile that acknowledged irony and justice, and the strange way the world sometimes circled back on itself. Schedule it, she told her assistant, and find out everything you can about Premium Trust Bank's current situation. I want to know exactly how desperate they are. The pieces were falling into place. Everything Jimin had been building, all the years of hard work and rejection and determination, were leading to something bigger than she'd originally imagined. Not just success, but transformation. Not just building something new, but changing something old. And somewhere in Premium Trust Bank, Michael Chen was still working, completely unaware that the girl he'd dismissed years ago was about to become impossible to ignore. 3 years after securing major funding, Jimin Park stood in front of floor-to-ceiling windows in the FinAccess headquarters. The office occupied 3 floors of a modern building downtown. Below, the city moved at its usual frantic pace. Above, the company she'd built from nothing employed 200 people and served over 5 million users. She was 28 now. Her clothes were still simple, but they fit better. Tailored pants, clean lines, nothing flashy. She could afford expensive things now, but chose not to. The girl who had worn a worn dress to open her first bank account wasn't far from the surface. Jimin never wanted to forget where she came from. David knocked on her office door. He was Chief Technology Officer now, with a real salary and stock options that had made him wealthy on paper. The Premium Trust Bank executives are here. Conference Room A. Jimin took a breath. She'd been preparing for this meeting for weeks. Her research team had compiled everything about Premium Trust Bank's current situation, and it wasn't good for them. Customer satisfaction scores were at an all-time low. Their mobile app had terrible reviews. They'd lost 20% of their customer base in 3 years. Their stock price had been cut in half. Multiple lawsuits over discriminatory practices had damaged their reputation beyond repair in some communities. Meanwhile, FinAccess had become the fastest-growing fintech company in the country. They'd been featured in major business publications. Jimin had been invited to speak at banking conferences at universities, at congressional hearings about financial inclusion. The company was valued at over $2 billion now. Traditional banks were terrified, not just of FinAccess, but of what it represented, a complete shift in how people thought about banking. Away from marble lobbies and judging customers by their clothes, toward accessibility, simplicity, and actually serving people's needs. Jimin walked into the conference room with her head high. 3 executives from Premium Trust Bank sat waiting. Robert Chen, the Chief Operating Officer, Margaret Sullivan, Head of Digital Strategy, and Daniel Torres, who ran their Business Development Division. "Thank you for meeting with us," Robert said, standing to shake her hand. "We've been impressed by what you've built with FinAccess." Jimin sat down, studying them. They looked uncomfortable, like people trying to negotiate from a weak position. "What can I do for you?" Margaret leaned forward. "We'll be direct. Premium Trust Bank is interested in acquiring FinAccess. We believe our resources combined with your technology and brand would create something powerful." "You want to buy us," Jimin said flatly. "We want to partner with you," Daniel corrected. "This would be a merger that benefits both parties." Jimin opened the folder in front of her. Her team had prepared detailed analysis of what Premium Trust Bank was really worth versus what they claimed. "Let me be direct as well. Your bank is failing. You've lost trust with customers. Your technology is outdated. Your brand is damaged. You're not looking for a partnership. You're looking for FinAccess to save you." The 3 executives exchanged glances. Robert cleared his throat. "That's a harsh assessment." "It's an accurate one," Jimin replied. "Your own quarterly reports show declining revenue. Your customer acquisition costs are rising, while your retention rates fall. You've tried to modernize but failed, because you don't understand what modern banking customers want." "And what do they want?" Margaret asked, a slight edge to her voice. "To be treated like human beings," Jimin said simply. "To not be judged by their bank balance or their clothes. To access services without jumping through arbitrary hoops designed to keep poor people out. You've built a system that serves wealthy customers and tolerates everyone else. FinAccess built a system that serves everyone equally." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "So you're not interested in acquisition talks?" "I didn't say that," Jimin said. "But if we're going to have this conversation, let's be honest about who holds the power here. You need us more than we need you." The meeting continued for another hour. Jimin listened to their proposals, their financial offers, their vision for combining the companies. All of it felt wrong. They wanted to absorb FinAccess, to use its brand while maintaining their old systems. They didn't want to change. They wanted to survive. After they left, David came back into the conference room. "Well, they don't get it," Jimin said. "They think they can buy their way out of their problems without actually changing. So we say no?" Jimin thought about it. "Not yet. There's something bigger here. Premium Trust Bank has infrastructure, banking licenses, physical locations, things that would take us years to build. But they need to understand that any deal would be on our terms, not theirs." Over the next weeks, Jimin's team dug deeper into Premium Trust Bank's situation. What they found was worse than they'd expected. Internal documents showed systemic discrimination in lending practices. Employee reviews revealed toxic management culture. Customer complaints numbered in the thousands, many describing treatment similar to what Jimin had experienced as a child. One report caught her attention. It listed all current employees by department. She scrolled through names until she found what she was looking for. Eichel Chen, Still working at Premium Trust Bank after all these years, now in middle management. Customer Service Manager, the title read. Jimin stared at the name for a long time, the man who had dismissed her, who had judged a 12-year-old girl by her clothes, who had made her feel small in that marble lobby. He was still there, probably treating customers the same way he'd treated her. She called her Chief Financial Officer, Rachel Wong, into her office. I want to make an offer to Premium Trust Bank, not for them to acquire us. For us to acquire them. Rachel's eyes widened. That would be massive, complex, expensive. I know, Jimin said. But I've been thinking. We've proven our model works. We've built something successful. But there are still millions of people using traditional banks like Premium Trust, staying with them out of habit or fear of change. What if we could transform one of those banks from the inside, show that our way of doing things can work at scale? You want to buy them and change everything, Rachel said slowly. I want to buy them and show them what banking should be, fix their broken systems, retrain their employees, transform their culture, and yes, maybe prove something to myself in the process. Rachel smiled. This is personal for you. Jimin didn't deny it. Very personal. But it's also the right business move. Premium Trust Bank has everything we need to scale faster, and we have everything they need to survive. The question is whether they're desperate enough to accept our terms. The answer came 6 weeks later. Premium Trust Bank's stock had fallen another 15% after a particularly bad earnings report. They were facing regulatory scrutiny and potential federal investigation into their discriminatory practices. They needed help and they knew it. This time, when Jimin met with Premium Trust Bank executives, the conversation was different. They were meeting in FinAccess's conference room on her territory. And this time, more executives had come, including the CEO, William Bradford. We've considered your proposal, William said. He was an older man, probably in his 60s, who looked like he'd lost sleep recently. It's not what we expected. You expected to buy us, Jimin said. Instead, we're offering to buy you. I understand that's difficult to accept. You're offering half of our current market valuation, Margaret pointed out. I'm offering what your company is actually worth, Jimin corrected. Your market cap is inflated by legacy value that's eroding daily. In 6 months, you'll be worth even less. In a year, you might not exist, the words hung in the air. Harsh, but true. Everyone in the room knew it. William looked directly at Jimin. Why do you want this? You could keep growing FinAccess independently. Why take on the headache of acquiring a struggling bank? Jimin considered how much truth to share. Because I believe banking should be better. Because millions of people still use traditional banks and deserve better service. Because I think I can fix what's broken at Premium Trust Bank and create something that serves everyone, not just the wealthy. And she added, her voice softer, because when I was 12 years old, I walked into one of your branches to open my first savings account. I had money I'd earned myself. I was proud of that money, and one of your employees made me feel small and worthless because of how I was dressed. He judged me by my appearance instead of treating me with respect. The room went silent. William's expression shifted to something like discomfort or maybe shame. That experience shaped my entire career, Jimin continued. It drove me to create FinAccess, to prove that banking could be different. Now I have a chance to actually make it different, not just in a new company but in an established institution, to show that change is possible. Daniel spoke up. You want to acquire us to get revenge? No, Jimin said firmly. Revenge would be watching your bank fail. This is about transformation. About taking something broken and making it work. About ensuring no other 12-year-old ever feels the way I felt that day. The negotiations took months. Lawyers, regulators, shareholders all had to approve. Jimin's board was split. Some thought acquiring Premium Trust Bank was too risky, too expensive, too complicated. James Morrison from Summit Partners supported her, seeing the long-term vision. You're not just buying a bank, he told the board. You're buying proof that your model can work anywhere. That's worth the risk. The deal finally closed on a Tuesday morning in October. FinAccess acquired Premium Trust Bank for $1.8 billion in a stock and cash deal. The news shocked the financial world. Headlines called it a historic reversal. A David beating Goliath moment. The future of banking consuming the past. Jimin was named CEO of the merged company. She would oversee the integration, the transformation, the complete overhaul of how Premium Trust Bank operated. It was a massive undertaking. Dangerous even. Many mergers failed. Many attempts at cultural transformation crashed and burned, but Jimin had never shied away from difficult challenges. She'd built a company from nothing while working 3 jobs. She'd faced rejection after rejection until she found believers. She'd proven that banking could be accessible and profitable. This was just the next step. The first day as CEO, Jimin walked into Premium Trust Bank's headquarters. The building was elegant, impressive, designed to intimidate. The marble lobby looked exactly how she remembered, though she'd never been to this particular branch. All their branches looked the same: cold, impressive, uninviting to anyone who didn't look like they belonged. Employees lined the hallways, watching her with a mix of curiosity, fear, and hope. They'd heard about FinAccess. Some had used the app secretly. Embarrassed that their own employer's services were inferior, they knew changes were coming. They just didn't know what those changes would mean for them. Jimin addressed them in a company-wide meeting that afternoon. 2,000 employees packed into the main auditorium and watched on video feeds from other locations. She stood on the stage in a simple gray dress, looking out at faces that ranged from openly hostile to cautiously optimistic. "My name is Jimin Park," she began, "and 15 years ago I walked into one of your branches to open my first savings account. I was treated poorly by an employee who judged me by my clothes instead of my character. That experience changed my life. It led me to create FinAccess, and now it's led me here." The room was completely silent. "I'm not here for revenge," she continued. "I'm here because I believe this bank can be better, that all of you can be better. Some of you will resist the changes coming. Some of you won't make it through the transformation. But those who stay, those who embrace what we're building, will be part of something important. We're going to show the world that banks can serve everyone with dignity and respect." After the meeting, Jimin reviewed personnel files in her new office. She'd asked for information on all managers and key employees. She wanted to understand who she was working with, who would support the changes, and who would fight them. One file made her pause. Michael Chen, he was still there, still working in customer service, now managing a team of 20 people. His performance reviews were average. No major complaints, but no excellence either. Just someone who had been doing the same job the same way for 15 years. Jimin closed the file and looked out at the city. Michael Chen didn't know who she was. Didn't remember a 12-year-old girl he'd dismissed. Didn't realize that his casual cruelty had set in motion events that would bring them back together. But he would learn. Soon. Jimin had plans for every aspect of Premium Trust Bank, and that included dealing with employees who represented everything she was working to change. Michael Chen's time of reckoning was coming, and Jimin intended to handle it personally. Jimin spent her first 3 weeks as CEO learning everything about Premium Trust Bank. She walked through every department, observed operations, talked to employees at all levels. She wanted to understand not just the systems, but the culture that had allowed those systems to fail so many customers. What she found disturbed her. The discrimination she'd experienced wasn't an isolated incident. It was woven into how the bank operated. Credit decisions that penalized people from certain zip codes, dress codes for employees that excluded cultural expression, training that emphasized selling products to wealthy clients while treating others as burdens, performance metrics that rewarded profit over people. David Lee, who had followed her from FinAccess to help lead the technology integration, sat in her office reviewing customer complaint data. "It's worse than we thought," he said. "Thousands of complaints about discriminatory treatment. Most were dismissed or buried in bureaucracy." Jimin read through some of the complaints. They were heartbreaking. A black woman denied a loan despite good credit. An elderly immigrant treated rudely when asking about account options. A young person in simple clothes made to feel unwelcome. Story after story of people being judged, dismissed, treated as less than human. "We're going to fix this," she said quietly. "All of it." She began making changes immediately. The first was retraining. Every employee, from tellers to executives, would go through mandatory training on serving customers with dignity. No exceptions, no shortcuts. If they wanted to keep their jobs at the new Premium Trust Bank, they would learn a different way of doing business. The second change was in policies. She eliminated minimum balance requirements on basic accounts. She removed fees that penalize people for being poor. She simplified the process of opening accounts, removing barriers that had kept people out. Some executives argued these changes would hurt profits. Jimin showed them FinAccess's numbers, proof that treating people well was actually good business. The third change was harder. She needed to address individual employees whose behavior had damaged customers. People who had been working the old way for so long they couldn't imagine anything different. People like Michael Chen. She scheduled a meeting with the entire customer service department. 50 employees gathered in a conference room looking nervous. They'd heard about the changes coming. Rumors spread fast through the bank. Some people were scared they'd lose their jobs. Others were excited about the possibility of working differently. Jimin stood at the front of the room in a simple navy dress. The color was deliberate, similar to the worn dress she'd owned as a child but tailored perfectly, a reminder to herself of where she'd come from. "I want to tell you a story," she began. 15 years ago, a 12-year-old girl walked into a premium trust bank branch. She'd saved $247 from her paper route and other small jobs. She was proud of that money. She wanted to open her first savings account. The room was silent. Some employees shifted uncomfortably. She wore an old dress because it was the best she had. Her shoes were scuffed because she'd walked miles delivering newspapers. When she approached the customer service desk, the employee who helped her made her feel worthless. He judged her by her appearance. He processed her account like he was doing her a favor, instead of providing a service she had every right to receive. Jimin paused, looking around the room. Her eyes found Michael Chen sitting in the third row. He was watching her with polite attention, the same expression everyone else wore. He had no idea. "That girl was me," Jimin said. "I was that 12-year-old, and the way I was treated that day changed the entire course of my life." Recognition flickered across several faces. Michael Chen's expression didn't change at first. Then slowly she saw it, the moment of realization. His face went pale. His eyes widened. He remembered. "I created FinAccess because I wanted banking to be different," Jimin continued. "I wanted every person, regardless of how they dressed or how much money they had, to be treated with respect. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to transform Premium Trust Bank into an institution that serves everyone equally." After the meeting, employees filed out slowly. Some looked inspired. Others looked shaken. Michael Chen didn't move from his seat. He sat frozen, staring at the table in front of him. Jimin gathered her notes slowly, giving people time to leave. When the room was mostly empty, she walked over to where Michael sat. He looked up at her with an expression of pure fear. "Miss Park," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything yet," Jimin replied. She pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. Up close, she could see that 15 years had marked him. Gray hair at his temples, lines around his eyes. He looked tired and small. "I remember that day," Michael said. "Not specifically, I mean. I don't remember you as an individual. But I remember being that person. The one who judged customers, who treated people badly if they didn't look right." "Why?" Jimin asked. It was the question that had bothered her for years. "Why did you treat people that way?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. "I was 24 when I started here. The bank trained us to value certain customers over others, to focus on people with money, with the right background. I was from a poor family myself, but I learned to hide it. I learned to judge others the way I was afraid of being judged. It was wrong. I know that now, but I didn't think about it then." "Did you ever change?" Jimin asked. "In the 15 years since that day, did you ever treat customers differently?" "I like to think so," Michael said. "But honestly, probably not enough. The system here doesn't reward treating everyone well. It rewards sales numbers and moving wealthy clients through quickly." I got comfortable. I stopped questioning things. Jimin studied him. She'd imagined this conversation for years. In some versions, she fired him immediately, making him feel the same fear and powerlessness she'd felt as a child. In others, she gave a speech about karma and justice. But sitting across from this middle-aged man who looked genuinely shaken, she felt something different than she'd expected. Not satisfaction, not even anger, just a kind of sad recognition that hurt people, and the cycle continued until someone chose to break it. "I could fire you," she said. "Your treatment of customers over the years, including me, would justify it." Michael nodded. "I understand. I deserve it. But firing you doesn't fix the problem," Jimin continued. "You're a symptom of a broken system. There are hundreds of employees here who were trained the same way, who learned to treat customers the same way you did. Firing all of them doesn't change banking. It just moves the problem somewhere else." She leaned forward. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to be demoted. You'll no longer manage other people until you prove you understand how to serve customers properly. You're going to go through intensive retraining, and you're going to be assigned to our community outreach program." "Community outreach?" Michael repeated. "We're opening financial literacy centers in underserved neighborhoods," Jimin explained. "Places where people have been shut out of banking, where they don't trust institutions like this one. You're going to work directly with those communities. You're going to see the people you once dismissed as human beings with real needs and real dignity. You're going to help them." Michael looked stunned. "You're giving me a chance?" "I'm giving you a choice," Jimin corrected. "You can accept this new role, do the hard work of changing, and maybe become part of the solution. Or you can leave. But if you stay and don't genuinely change, if I hear about you treating anyone the way you treated me, you're done. No second chances after this." "Why?" Michael asked. "Why give me anything after what I did?" Jimin thought about her grandmother's words from 15 years ago, about choosing to be different, about breaking cycles instead of continuing them. "Because my grandmother taught me that becoming successful isn't about revenge, it's about making things better. I can't change what happened to me, but I can change what happens to the next person, and the next. You can be part of that change, or you can be part of the past. Your choice." Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll do it. The retraining, the community work, all of it. I want to be better than I was." "We'll see," Jimin said, standing up. "Start tomorrow. Report to Rachel Wong in HR. She'll outline your new position." As she walked toward the door, Michael called out, "Miss Park? Thank you. I don't deserve this chance, but thank you." Jimin turned back. "Don't thank me, earn it. Prove that people can change. That's the only thanks I want." Over the next months, the transformation of Premium Trust Bank accelerated. Jimin implemented every change she'd envisioned. New training programs rolled out across all branches. Policies were rewritten to prioritize service over profit. Physical branches were redesigned to be more welcoming, less intimidating. The marble lobbies remained, but they were softened with comfortable seating, natural light, and staff trained to greet everyone warmly regardless of appearance. Not everyone embraced the changes. Some executives resigned, unable to adapt to the new direction. Some employees fought against retraining, insisting the old ways were fine. Jimin let them go. She needed people committed to the mission, not just collecting paychecks. But many employees thrived. They'd been working in a broken system that didn't reflect their values, and the changes freed them to provide actual service. Customer satisfaction scores began climbing. New accounts opened at rates Premium Trust Bank hadn't seen in years. Young people, immigrants, and underserved communities who had avoided traditional banks started giving them a second chance. The financial literacy centers opened in 6 cities. Michael Chen was assigned to the Los Angeles location. Jimin received weekly reports on his progress. At first they were tentative. He was clearly uncomfortable, still learning how to connect with communities he'd once dismissed. But slowly the reports improved. He was showing up early, staying late, genuinely listening to people's stories. He was changing, or at least trying to. 4 months after the acquisition, Jimin visited the Los Angeles center unannounced. She wanted to see for herself how things were working. The center was in a neighborhood similar to where she'd grown up. Small businesses, diverse families, people working hard to build better lives. Inside, about 20 people sat in a classroom setting. Michael stood at the front explaining basic budgeting concepts. He spoke simply, clearly, without condescension. When a woman asked a question in halting English, he was patient, rephrasing until she understood. When a teenager admitted he was embarrassed about not knowing how credit worked, Michael shared his own financial mistakes, making the young man feel less alone. Jimin watched from the back. This wasn't the man she remembered from 15 years ago. Or maybe it was the man he could have been all along if the system hadn't taught him to be something worse. After the class, Michael saw her standing there. He walked over looking nervous but not terrified like before. "I didn't know you were coming," he said. "I wanted to see the program in action," Jimin replied. "You did well. That was good teaching. Thank you." Michael hesitated, then continued. "This work, it's opened my eyes. These are good people with real challenges. I was so wrong about so much. That's the point, Jimin said, changing perspectives, breaking cycles. A young girl, maybe 11 or 12, approached them. She wore a simple dress and old sneakers. She looked like Jimin had looked 15 years ago. She held up a certificate of completion from the financial literacy program. I finished, she said proudly. Mr. Chen helped me understand everything. Michael smiled at her, and it was genuine. You did great, Maria. You're going to be excellent with money. Jimin watched the girl skip away, her certificate held high. She felt something release inside her chest. A tension she'd carried for 15 years, slowly letting go. This was what she'd wanted. Not revenge, not punishment, change, real meaningful change. You're doing good work here, she told Michael. Keep it up. As she left the center, Jimin received a call from Rachel Wong. The board meeting is in an hour. They want to discuss the 6-month integration results. I'll be there, Jimin said. The merger was working. The numbers proved it. Customer growth, satisfaction scores, positive media coverage. Premium Trust Bank was transforming from a struggling institution into something innovative and inclusive. The financial world was watching, amazed that such dramatic change was possible. But for Jimin, the real success wasn't in the numbers. It was in moments like watching Michael Chen teach a young girl about banking with patience and respect. It was in seeing employees enthusiastically embrace new ways of serving customers. It was in knowing that somewhere, a 12-year-old in a worn dress could walk into any Premium Trust Bank branch and be treated with dignity. That was the victory. That was what 15 years of work had been building toward. Not destroying the institution that had hurt her, but transforming it into something better. Not punishing individuals, but changing systems. Not revenge, but redemption. As Jimin drove back to the main office, she thought about her grandmother, who had passed away 2 years ago, but whose lessons still guided her every day. Choose to be better. Break cycles. Turn pain into purpose. She'd done that. She was still doing it, and she wasn't finished yet. 1 year after the acquisition, Jimin Park stood in the renovated lobby of the flagship Premium Trust Bank branch. The marble floors remained, but everything else had changed. Comfortable seating areas replaced intimidating barriers. Natural light poured through new windows. Digital screens showed information in multiple languages. Most importantly, the staff moved through the space with purpose and warmth, greeting every customer like they belonged there. Because they did belong. Everyone did. That was the entire point. Jimin was 30 years old now, CEO of Access Trust Bank, the new name for the merged institution. The rebranding had happened 6 months earlier, symbolizing the complete transformation from old to new, from exclusive to accessible, from judgment to service. The numbers told part of the story. Access Trust Bank now served 12 million customers, combining FinAccess's original user base with Premium Trust's existing accounts and millions of new customers who had never felt welcome at traditional banks. Revenue was up 40%. Customer satisfaction scores had climbed from among the worst in the industry to among the best. The stock price had recovered and then soared beyond previous highs, but Jimin cared more about the stories behind the numbers. The single mother who finally got approved for a small business loan, the immigrant family who opened their first accounts without being made to feel less than, the young person starting their financial journey with dignity and support. Those were the victories that mattered. Her assistant approached. Miss Park, the ceremony is starting in 15 minutes. Jimin nodded. Today was special. Access Trust Bank was opening its 100th financial literacy center, this one in her old neighborhood. The place where she'd grown up, where she'd delivered newspapers to save money, where her grandmother had taught her about grace and determination. Returning there as CEO felt like closing a circle. The center was in a renovated community building, bright and welcoming. Local residents had already started using it, attending classes on budgeting, credit, home ownership, and financial planning. All free. All taught by trained staff who understood the communities they served. When Jimin arrived, a crowd had gathered. Local officials, community leaders, families from the neighborhood. News cameras captured the moment. Access Trust Bank's transformation had become a national story. Business schools taught case studies about it. Other banks tried to replicate the model, though most struggled without the authentic commitment that drove every decision Jimin made. She saw familiar faces in the crowd. David Lee, her first employee and now Chief Technology Officer. Rachel Wong, who'd helped manage the difficult process of cultural transformation, James Morrison from Summit Partners, the investor who'd believed in her vision when others dismissed it, Sarah, Marcus, and Lisa from the original FinAccess team, all now in leadership positions at Access Trust. And there, near the back, stood Michael Chen. He wasn't required to be here. His assignment to the Los Angeles Center had ended 3 months ago. He'd been promoted again, now leading the entire financial literacy initiative. His transformation had been remarkable. The man who once judged customers by their appearance now advocated fiercely for inclusive banking. He spoke at conferences about unlearning prejudice. He mentored new employees on treating every customer with respect. Jimin had been skeptical at first, watching for any sign that his change wasn't genuine. But a year of consistent behavior, of humble work, of real growth had convinced her. People could change. It wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, but it was possible. Michael Chen was proof. Jimin stepped up to the microphone as the crowd quieted. She looked out at faces young and old, diverse and beautiful, hopeful and cautious. Her people. The community that had shaped her. 15 years ago, she began, I was a 12-year-old girl with $247 I'd earned delivering newspapers and doing odd jobs. I wanted to open my first savings account. I walked into a bank excited and proud, and I was made to feel like I didn't belong there. The employee who helped me judged me by my clothes, my age, the amount of money I had. He made me feel small. The crowd was silent, listening intently. That day changed my life, not because it broke me, but because it showed me something was wrong. Banking shouldn't make people feel small. It should empower them. It should be accessible to everyone, regardless of income or background or what they're wearing. I decided that day to change how banking works. She paused, gathering her thoughts. It took 15 years, a lot of hard work, many failures, and eventual success to get here. I built a company called FinAccess to prove that accessible banking could work. And then I had the opportunity to acquire Premium Trust Bank, the very institution that had treated me poorly. Jimin saw Michael Chen in the crowd. He was listening with his head slightly bowed, his expression serious. I could have destroyed that bank, Jimin continued. I could have fired everyone, closed branches, erased the name. Some people expected me to. But my grandmother taught me something important. She taught me that success isn't about revenge. It's about transformation. It's about taking something broken and making it better. It's about breaking cycles of hurt instead of continuing them. She gestured to the building behind her. This center represents what I believe banking should be. Education, empowerment, accessibility. No one here will be judged. No one will be turned away. Everyone will be treated with the respect they deserve. Because everyone deserves respect no matter what. The crowd applauded. Jimin continued over the sound. I want to introduce someone to you, she said. The applause died down. Michael Chen, please come up here. There was a murmur through the crowd. Michael looked shocked. He hadn't expected to be called forward. Slowly, reluctantly, he made his way through the crowd to the front. He stood next to Jimin, looking uncomfortable under the attention. She turned to him, speaking into the microphone so everyone could hear. Michael Chen is the employee who treated me poorly 15 years ago, Jimin said. There were gasps from the crowd. Some angry looks directed at Michael. He judged me by my appearance. He made me feel like I didn't belong, and for years I was angry about that. Michael's face reflected shame and regret. He didn't try to defend himself. But here's what I learned, Jimin continued. Michael wasn't the problem. He was a symptom. He was taught by a broken system to treat people that way. The bank's culture, policies, and priorities created employees who judged customers instead of serving them. When I acquired Premium Trust Bank, I had a choice. I could punish individuals like Michael, or I could change the system that created them. She looked at Michael. I chose to change the system, and I gave Michael a choice. He could leave, or he could do the hard work of changing himself. He chose to change. And over the past year, I've watched him transform from someone who judged customers to someone who genuinely serves them. He now leads our financial literacy initiative. He's helped thousands of people learn about banking and money management. He's become part of the solution. Michael's eyes were wet. He looked at Jimin with an expression of gratitude and continued amazement that she'd given him this chance. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand what Access Trust Bank stands for, Jimin said to the crowd. We believe people can change. We believe systems can change. We believe banking can be better. And we're proving it every day. The crowd applauded again, more warmly this time. Jimin handed the microphone to Michael. He looked terrified but took it. "I don't deserve to be standing here," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "What I did to Miss Park when she was 12 years old was wrong. It was cruel. And I did similar things to countless other customers over the years. I'm ashamed of the person I was." He paused, collecting himself. "Miss Park could have fired me, could have publicly shamed me, could have made me pay for my mistakes. Instead, she gave me the chance to become better. She demoted me, retrained me, and assigned me to work directly with communities I had once dismissed. And that work changed my life." Michael looked out at the crowd. "I've met hundreds of people through these financial literacy centers. People working hard, trying to build better lives, facing obstacles I never had to face. People who were treated the way I once treated others. Each person I meet reminds me why this work matters, why banking needs to be different, why I needed to be different." His voice grew stronger. "I can't undo the past. I can't take back the hurt I caused. But I can do better going forward. And I can tell you that Access Trust Bank is real. The changes are real. We're not perfect yet, but we're genuinely trying to serve everyone with dignity. And if someone like me can change, then anything is possible." The crowd applauded as Michael handed the microphone back to Jimin. She saw tears on some faces, saw understanding, saw hope. This was what she wanted. Not to punish people who'd been wrong, but to show that change was possible.